Part 3 of this presentation is a brief overview of how biblical precedent has influenced Western societies during the Common Era. Canonical authority of Scripture has continued to maintain its centrality within Jewish and Christian religious traditions. Covenants established in the Bible have also greatly influenced the legal precedent of the late Roman Empire, and, by extension, they played a major role establishing independent nations after the Roman Empire's dissolution, such as England, France, Germany, Spain, and eventually nations throughout the continents of North and South America. Undeniably, the governing systems of ancient Greece, the governances of medieval Nordic and Germanic societies, as well as other systems, contributed to establishing the governments of nations throughout the Western world. But the Judeo-Christian tradition has been by far the prevailing authority during the past 2 millennia. Before Christianity became the predominant religion of the world, Judaism was a well-established religion in the Middle East. After unsuccessful rebellions against the Romans during the 1st and 2nd centuries of the Common Era, as well as the destruction of the Jerusalem Temple, a Jewish diaspora began throughout the Roman Empire. Almost in concert with the writings of the New Testament, Jewish oral traditions were being written down and comprised what is known as the Mishnah. This became the basis of halakha, or rabbinical Judaism. Without a functioning temple, adherence to halakha became the authority of Jewish society throughout the diaspora. In addition to oral traditions, the legal precedent of the Torah remained authoritative within rabbinical Judaism, so far as it could be observed without a temple. The rise of Christianity roughly coincided with the decline of the pagan Roman Empire. Although ancient Rome's authority had waxed and waned for centuries throughout the continents of the Eastern Hemisphere, it experienced its dusking during the 4th and 5th centuries of the Common Era. During this time, the Emperor Constantine supposedly converted to Christianity around the early part of the 4th century. Whether Constantine genuinely converted, or whether he merely seized on a political maneuver to salvage the last vestiges of a crumbling empire, is difficult to discern. This is in part because the version of Christianity that was birthed out of Constantine's supposed conversion was increasingly corrupted and eventually became a smeared reflection of New Testament Christianity. However, Constantine can be credited with bringing an end to centuries of Christian martyrdom during the pagan governance of ancient Rome. That was the Roman Empire that crucified Christ, and which was once governed by Nero. Once Constantine claimed to be a Christian himself, Christian ideas began to heavily influence Roman governance. Initially, this was evidenced by the Edict of Milan and the Nicene Creed. The Edict of Milan provided Christians legal protections, and the Nicene Creed provided doctrinal uniformity among Christians throughout the Roman Empire. These newly welcomed protections and freedoms allowed Christians to implement Judeo-Christian dictates within their communities, such as biblical covenants and New Testament teachings. These moral and civil codes eventually became the basis of Roman legal authority, even after the empire split into the Western and Eastern Roman empires. The Eastern Roman Empire would eventually be dominated by the Greek Orthodox Church, and the Western Roman Empire during the 9th century, Charlemagne catalyzed the expansion of a, quote, holy, unquote, Roman Empire. The first few centuries of the 2nd millennium CE experienced the expansion of this Holy Roman Empire in the West, until the Protestant Reformation. The seeds of the Protestant Reformation were planted as early as the 12th century, but culminated in 1517 when the German theologian Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the door of Castle Church in Wittenberg, Germany, which protested the corruptions of the Roman Catholic Church. Unfortunately, Luther himself later developed several anti-Semitic sentiments in his dotage. England also developed its own unique Protestant church during the Reformation, the Church of England. However, there were groups of Christians within England who believed its Reformation did not go far enough. These Christians, known as Puritans, would be instrumental in the founding of the United States and establishing the biblical precedent of our legal system. An important point to consider: initially, the organized, quote, church, end quote, of Rome was a reciprocity of Christianity, but it eventually became indistinguishable from the power-hungry governments of the ancient Roman Empire. Popes and priests absorbed many of the traditions of the pagan societies they converted, and they corruptly wielded political power that would have been the envy of Rome's previous Caesars and Senates. However, the sins of the clergy aside, the Roman Church did make many positive contributions to Western society. It established institutions of academic learning, such as cathedrals and monastery schools, which were the forebearers of the preeminent universities throughout Europe. Bishop Augustine of Hippo was an intellectual influence during the 4th century, as he would lay the groundwork for a biblical interpretation of natural law, which was extensively developed by the 13th century Dominican friar Thomas Aquinas. Natural law is one of Conservatives' Corner's pillars of conservatism, and we will be examining this pillar in depth in our presentations of natural law.